Hi Guy Builds, welcome to another video. I'm going to spend this time on this video kind of overviewing what I've done on the truck and also kind of get into buying decisions and an overall comparison with what I've done here and other trucks in the mid-size truck market, which are quite a few. But what I want to do today is I'm going to do some measurements on some ground clearances and then kind of move over into my thinking on the build, the decision process I used, and kind of go from there. Kind of give you some insight, something you really don't see in a whole lot of YouTube videos on the trucks. Obviously, the photojournalists, auto journalists, they're never going to review a truck like this. TFL's kind of doing that with their little Dodge 1500 stubby. But other than that, very rarely do people talk about the trucks, kind of the work trucks. But let me start off by taking some measurements and going over some of the ground clearances and what I've done on the truck. And then I'm going to come back over some of my thought processes going into everything. All right, let me get started. So starting off, here in the front, the ARB skid plates going front to rear have a pretty consistent ground clearance all the way back. You do lose some ground clearance with the skid plates, but you really do cover up all those spots that can really catch on obstacles that you're going over. And then of course having the skid plates gives you the ability not to have to worry about, oh, am I going to bash something underneath there? So yes, I lost some ground clearance, but I have the comfort of knowing that when I do go over something and I hear something hitting, I know it's hitting, my plates down here, and I don't have to worry about it. It's kind of the same thinking on the rear diff skid. The rear diff is a pretty solid piece of steel. It can take some beating, but I'd rather not bang the hell out of that thing. I just assume go through the trails and not have to worry so much about my line placement being so critical. As long as I keep some momentum going and keep the truck moving, and with some traction, I can slide over things. So kind of getting started, here with the front bumper I added, it does stick out from the stock bumper, so I do lose some approach angle. And that might come into when you're coming up on a rock ledge, it's probably going to hit on this before my tire has a chance to engage. So I'll be limited, but I'm not building a rock slider here. So we'll get into that discussion on my thought process a little bit later. Let's get on with the measurements. So I got 17.5 inches to this point right here. Well, that's pretty good. The very front edge of the ARB skid plate on the bash plate comes in at 14.5 inches. And I'm going to get down and kind of measure the ground clearance at the lower control arms. So directly underneath the lower control arms, and really running all the way back under the transmission and the transfer case is 11 inches. I'm going to double check that at the very back. All right. With those ARB skid plates at the very back, underneath the back of the transfer case, I've actually got 13 inches of ground clearance. And the bottom edge of the rock sliders come in at 18 inches of ground clearance. All right, let me go ahead and get some measurements under the rear diff. Okay, my ground clearance, which is the lowest spot, is under the rear diff. So that rear diff skid did take up a ½ an inch or so. I've got 9½ inches of ground clearance under that rear diff. Once again, the only way to increase that is with the tire size, which I've done. I'm running these 33-inch 255/80 R17 Falcon Wild Peak AT3s. So the only way I really increased that clearance above that skid rear diff was with the tires. And that skid plate does take up some, but it kind of comes forward and actually protects the pinion as well. So I have the comfort of knowing that is there, so I don't have to be worried about bashing into a boulder with that minimal amount of ground clearance. And then as far as under the rear hitch, so your departure angle. So as I'm coming down, say, in Moab, what is that? I think it's a frame bender or a couple of those spots that the TFL guys always show, the true test of departure angle. Typically either the exhaust tips, if they're out the back, or the trailer hitch tends to rub going down the rocks. So I'm at 20 inch at the bottom edge of my receiver on the trailer hitch. So I am planning on getting some type of insert to go into that trailer hitch that gets me some skid to protect that rear bumper. Because even though the rear bumper and the front bumper are metal, they're a pretty thin gauge. There's not much to them. All right. So these 255 80/17s are an advertised 33.1 inches. All right, so currently I'm running about 30 psi in the tires, and I'm right under 32 inches of actual piped on the tires. So there's room in there after I removed the crash bars, and given that I have also gone with the skinny, the 255, there's room under there for a 34-inch tire without having any rubbing. So you could go a little bit bigger. I guess at this point I will shift over to what I was thinking as I'm doing this build, and get into that part of the video. And I've got some notes that I've taken because I've also gone into the configurators and got some comparison prices on the competition. So let me start off. If you're in the market for a mid-sized truck, you've got a lot of choices. And I think the biggest thing for me in doing my research was I really had to be honest with myself on what I was planning or how I was planning on using this truck. It is a new truck. I've spent some money, and so I want to protect the investment, and it's my daily driver. Before I had a Silverado, a Jeep Wrangler TJ, and I've sold those vehicles and dropped down to just having a single vehicle. Now I have a motorcycle and some other vehicles, but as far as daily driver goes, this is my truck. So I knew I was going to be daily driving this truck, so OME kit is very well known for the quality of the ride, while still giving you the lift and the needs you have for going off-road. And really, to be honest, I'm really happy with it. I was a little skeptical about the twin tube shock designs that the truck uses, but it's better than stock by all means. And the other benefit of this lift kit was it came with new leaf springs in the back as well. So the stock unit uses a mono-leaf setup, which is really good for distributing heavy loads, because this truck, the way I bought it and the way it's set up, I've got 1,700 pounds of payload with this truck, as well as 7,500 pounds of towing capacity. So that's the advantage of that mono-leaf. It's very linear in how it adjusts to the varying loads in the truck. The downside is that it's in articulation and ride quality. So with the OME kit, it went to a 4 leaf pack system with an overload spring, so really a 5-pack. And it's got a very noticeable better, higher quality ride, even with the bed being empty. I went with the medium kit, so because I knew there's going to be weight in the back when I'm pulling my trailer and going off-road. I didn't want to stick with the light. The light would have been kind of a stock quality and would have been good, but once I start going camping and doing my overlanding and my off-roading, I'm going to be carrying some weight in addition to the tongue weight I'm going to have with the trailer. And we'll get into the trailer. You've probably seen some of my off-road camper builds now that the truck is kind of finished, other than some lights that I'm wanting to add. I'm wanting to add some fog lights and also some spot and driving lights. But for now, really the truck is kind of built up as much as I'm going to do. And now I'm going to shift my concentration over to my off-road camper build. I just recently ordered all the doors, the compartments, the windows, and the fans. And so I'm going to really start jumping into doing that. You know, because my goal, let me get back to that. So my goal was to spend every October through December out west, doing some overlanding, some camping. So I wanted the most capable truck for off-road build that I could, while still maintaining a great ride quality, given it's a daily driver. So I took a gas mileage hit. I did a gas mileage run with the stock tires, and I haven't done a long distance run with these larger tires, but I've only seen about a 1.5 mile drop in my fuel economy. So just riding around town, I'm getting 19, 20 miles per gallon. So I'm super stoked with that. And this off-road camper I'm building will probably max out at probably 2,300 pounds. So it's, other than the wind load, the drag it's going to add onto the truck, the trailer's not really going to add much load. I don't think it's going to affect the fuel economy that bad. But my plan here was to, if all I was doing was pulling the camper and going down some Forest Service roads, you know, go out to Moab, you know, go down a gravel road a couple miles and set up camp and hang out. To be honest with you, a Honda Ridgeline would do great. That's a great truck if that's all you're wanting to do. But my plan is to go into the backcountry, disconnect from my trailer, create a base camp, and then take the truck by itself and go do some off-roading and some exploring. You know, so that's where the increased capacities came into play, that I knew that the Ridgeline wouldn't be able to deal with. You don't see a whole lot of Ridgelines doing Moab, and that's for a good reason. You know, there's just they just don't have the ground clearance, and there's just not enough room in there to get a tire under there. You know, so it has its limitations. So when I was going through the buying process, that's what it was. I knew I was building a light-off overlanding rig, and so money was obviously a big concern. And I knew I was going to be making these modifications. that come on all these mid-sized trucks from the factory, they're kind of crappy tires. Even the Tremor, and these upper end, packaged off-road trucks, the best tire maybe is like a General Grabber AT. It kind of looks like a KO2, and I think it's a 31-inch tire, but it's got nothing on these Wild Peaks. I wanted these Wild Peaks. They're both cost-effective, and got the 3-peak snow rating. I've had experience with these tires on my Jeep TJ, and they did really good in the snow. We do get a little bit of snow here in Missouri, but not a lot. But I've had them in the mud, and they do great. So I knew that the skid plates that come with these stock off-road builds are pretty lame. I mean, yes, you get to a ZR2 package with the AEV package, you've got some real skid plates that are comparable to what I have under this truck. And when I went onto the configurators, in the Toyota site, in the Tacoma configurator, they did have a dealer installed option for these ARB skid plates. I think it was like $1,700 plus installation. So you could upgrade, between the Tacoma and the ZR2, you could get up to the under vehicle protection that I currently have on this truck. But how much you're going to spend? I looked, and a ZR2 is $58,000. How much was it? Let me see here. The ZR2 base, not with premium and all kinds of options added, was $48,000. So for that $48,000, that ZR2 will come with a 33-inch tire. It does come if you get that AEV package, which probably brings it up to probably 55. We'll get this skid plate protection. You'll get some rock sliders in that package. So that ZR2 package is probably the closest mid-sized truck built from the factory the way I've built this truck. Now granted, that ZR2 still doesn't have a winch in it, which I've gotten here. I've got a 15-gallon auxiliary fuel tank that I've got in the back of the truck bed. So I've got a rear view camera set up that it's the rear view mirror cam. So it's got a front camera, and instead of mounting the rear camera into the back, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to mount that rear facing camera up actually to the front of the bumper, pointing down, so that when I get into those limited sight lines off-roading, I've got that camera I can go to see where I'm going. Because this XL truck is basic. I mean, there's no, other than the rear backup camera, there's no lane departure, there's no adaptive cruise control, and that's kind of why I wanted this truck. I didn't want all those electronic minis. I really didn't need those off-road modes. Yes, they are better, but here you're talking about more computers, more points of failure. My goal was to make a truck that would be as basic as possible. I mean, I got a tiny little screen in there, but really, I just run music through it. If I'm running some kind of navigation, which I haven't set up yet, I can do it over my phone. I might mount a small tablet for running Gaia through, but, so it doesn't have the nits. It doesn't have the leather seating. That doesn't have the big screen. Like I say, it doesn't have the off-road modes. A lot of these things you're forced into buying when you get into these upper-end off-road packages, being the Tremor or the ZR2 or whatever you're doing. You take it with a grain of salt. What are you looking to get? What are you wanting to do? Now, I have the time, the space, the tools, and the know-how to do all these modifications on the truck myself. If you had to pay somebody to do these modifications, yeah, you're talking about another $2,500, $3,500 I'm going to kind of get into the money here in a little bit of what I've spent. So once again, kind of back to what I'm doing. I'm going to go to Moab, drop the trailer off, and then I'm going to do some trails. I'm not going to do any hardcore trails. I know the limitations of what I've done here, and that really comes down to the ground clearance. That 13, 11-inch ground clearance I have under those ARB skid plates. Those are really my limitations. And that front bumper, since it's decreased my approach angle, it's going to interfere with my ability to start up a ledge. Hopefully I'm not going to be one of these guys that stacks rocks. I'm totally against watching the YouTube videos where guys are out there stacking rocks. If you're stacking rocks, you got no business being where you're at. That's just not cool. So hopefully you'll never see me when I'm out, doing some filming. Hopefully I'll never get to that point where, to do this trail, I'm probably going to have to stack some rocks here and there. But that's the whole point of the wedge. You know what I mean? And I'll do another video on all my recovery gear that I have set up to work with this truck. I'm really happy with the truck, the way it turned out. So let me go over kind of the options you have. I knew I wanted this generation of Ranger. This generation has been out for a long time. All the kinks are worked out of. They've been using this motor for years in lots of different products. So I'm not worrying so much about trying to deal with warranty issues given the modifications I've done on this truck. If I have a problem with the transmission or the engine and I take this into Ford, they're going to be like, hey, you got these big tires and this lift kit on here, we're not going to cover this repair. Well, that's kind of the advantage of buying a truck in the tail end of its generation, is that most likely all of those problem areas have been worked out. So I'm feeling pretty confident on that. Right now I've got less than 37,000 tied into this. I'm going to kind of put a list up here in front of the camera so that you guys can see in kind of in detail what I've done. I don't know if it's going to show up, but it's probably hard with the wind blowing. If you can see any of that, whether or not you'll be able to pause on that. But I've done a bunch, and I've included everything in that $37,000 price. And to be honest with you, when I was going over all the options, there's some pretty good truck options in that $38,000 range. Probably the most notable one is the Tacoma, the TRD with the off-road package. That package came in at $41,500. So that's a little bit more, but you're getting a truck pretty much off the showroom floor. That's ready to go. Tires aren't quite as big as this. You don't have as much skid plates. You don't have the rod sliders. You don't have a winch. But all in all, it's a pretty damn good truck. The problem I had with this generation of Tacoma is the drivetrain. It is so inferior to the drivetrain in this truck. Even with the bigger tires, with that 10-speed and the torque of this motor in stock form at 310 pound-feet of torque, that comes in at like 3,000 RPM. So even at 2,000 RPMs, I'm running a pretty good level of torque. Now, they make a tuner for this motor. I can increase the torque by 60 pound-feet on this truck at, I think, 2,500 RPMs. So that's huge. So if I ever felt like I needed extra power, which I'm not a hot rodder, what I have here is fine. It does great. But I have that option. So the other problem with the Tacoma is the seating position. It's long distance, it's just going to be uncomfortable. So the Tacoma had some hurdles that I just couldn't get over to go that route. Now, the good thing, if you're in the market for a mid-size truck, is, man, you've got some great options coming up here in the next year, year and a half. The Colorado and the Canyon, the next newest generation of that has just come out, and you can order now that truck. Andre with TFL just recently put in an order. He sold his F-150 hybrid that he had, and has purchased or placed an order for the 2023 Colorado Trail Boss. Now, that's a great option. He went with the mid horsepower. There's 3 horsepower. It's the same motor. The Trail Boss, here's the problem with the Trail Boss, is you can only get it in the crew cab with the 5-foot bed. So, I like the 6-foot bed. It's just me and my dog. I might have one other passenger. I don't need that back seat. I've got it all emptied out. I can put stuff in there. I've got room. But same with the trimmer. If you're going to get the trimmer, you're forced into getting that crew cab 5-foot bed cab configuration. So keeping that aside, that's the one advantage of the Tacoma. You can get the Tacoma TRD off-road with the Super Cab. They call it Access Cab with the 6-foot bed. So same scenario as this. But by the time you bring that Tacoma up to this level with the winch, the rock sliders, the tires, you're going to be way over 45 grand, possibly even more, and you're still running that old motor. Now, the new generation of the Tacoma is probably coming out in a year, year and a half, about the same time the Ranger, the new generation of it, is coming out. So the rumor is that Tacoma is going to come with I think a 2.7 liter, which this is a 2.3 turbo. So odds are, just like the Colorado, their horsepower and torque numbers are going to overpass the Rangers. I believe that motor that Andre ordered with his Trail Boss is the 2.7 turbo 4, and I believe it's a 9-speed or an 8-speed. I can't remember I think it's an 8-speed transmission. So still a great transmission, and I think he has the 310 horsepower, 390 pound-feet of torque version of that 2.7 that he's ordered with the Trail Boss. So once again, for me to come close to matching that numbers, I'd have to add a tuner, which I don't plan on doing. I want to maintain the longevity and the durability of this powertrain. I don't see myself needing that extra power. I'm not going to be drag racing. I'm not doing mud. I'm not going out in the sand pits and doing sand dragging. I'm not going to do that. Even with the bigger tires, this drivetrain is great. I still have use of my 10-speed transmission. With these tires going 70 miles an hour down the interstate in 10th gear, I'm running about 1,600 RPM, 1,650. With the stock tires, 70 miles an hour, which they were like 30-inch tires, I was running about 1,750, 1,800 RPMs. So the power band has moved, but this 10-speed transmission, I have an option of going in there and hitting the up and down trigger on the shifter, and I can actually lock out top gears. So if I'm going somewhere and I know I'm never going to get over 45, I literally can lock out 10th, 9th, and 8th gear and keep that transmission from upshifting and the RPMs lowering. Now when I'm going down the road in this, I can be in 10th gear going 55 or 60 and be running, 1,200 RPMs. The truck does great. Now as soon as you get into the gas, it does a double downshift down to 8. So the transmission works great. So let's get back to that Colorado. The Colorado Trail Boss, that one is coming in at like 38,000. Very close to what I've got into here. Now what you're getting a lot of truck for that 38,000. That's a great deal, that Trail Boss. I'm not sure if that 38,000 includes the motor upgrade, but let's just say it does. It has that more powerful motor. And it doesn't have the tires that I have. They're going to be an inch or two shorter. Doesn't have the rock sliders, doesn't have a winch, doesn't have as good as skid plates, but Interiors, beautiful, big screens. You got the off-road modes, leather seating. It's a nice truck, so the downside I have with that is that I'm working with this truck. I got vinyl floors. I don't have to worry about what my shoes are like if I'm bringing in mud or snow and slush in the truck. My dog, when I first got the truck a week in, he threw up into the floor, and I was just like, no big deal. They're vinyl floors. I wiped it up. No big deal. Didn't have to yell at the dog or anything, It's a work truck. I'm not going to be concerned about pinstriping the side of this truck. If it gets bad and I don't like the way it looks, I'll wrap it. I'll put something on there and change it, But I built and bought this truck to use, So that comes into the problem is you get into like the ZR2. That Colorado ZR2 is badass. It adds the front locker, more skid plates, 33-inch tires. I mean, right off the showroom. That's probably the best mid-sized truck you can buy. You're not going to have to do anything. Maybe, some tire upgrades, maybe. Or if you get that AEV package, which like I say will send you up into the 50 grand range, it's going to be better than this truck. It's going to have better features. It's going to have the lane change assist. It's going to have the adaptive cruise control. It's going to be nice, So are you going to want to take that thing off-road and get muddy and stuff and track all that into that nice truck? Probably not. Or the other case is you buy this truck and you want to add the bigger tires, but you're like, I don't want to risk messing up my warranty. So I'm going to leave it like this for the first 3 years before I start doing modifications. Well, that's fine too, But at some point or another, you're going to end up probably doing some modifications. The only thing I could see changing on this truck is maybe the front coilovers. Moving up to a higher quality, a Falcon or something with a reservoir that maybe is adjustable. But for what I'm planning on doing, this is going to be fine. So the Honda Ridgeline, I think I came back, that's $41,000. What a truck. You got room in there to maybe get a 31-inch tire. So if all you're doing is the forest roads and some, you can do the white rim trail in Moab in a minivan, So you can do a lot of stuff with 9 inches of ground clearance and a 31-inch tire. But if you have any desire to do anything more than that, it ain't going to cut it, So there's a lot of routes to go. The Nissan Pro 4X, the Frontier, they're about $43,000. A little high for a Nissan. Nissans are typically to be cheaper than a Toyota, which they're not in this case. It's a nice truck, but by the time you do what I've done, once again, you're up at 50. What are you going to do? You've got to make those decisions. So you say, well, what about the trimmer? Yeah, I could have bought a trimmer. The trimmer has to be a crew cab, 5-foot bed, and it has to be the XLT or the Lariat. Well, a trimmer, XLT, is $44,000. It's running a 31-inch tire. It's got cheesy skid plates. The little step that looks like a rock slider. It's just a step. You can take those little step hoops off, but I parked next to one and looked at it. I got 2 inches more tire than the trimmer. I've got a couple more inches of ground clearance. I've got way better skid plates. I've got rock sliders that are physically attached to the frame at 3 points. These Rocky Road Outfitter rock sliders, they advertise them. They can withstand the full weight of the truck coming down on that rock slider. So some people might say, well, from what you're saying you're wanting to do, why do you need that stuff? Well, say you're climbing over a 18-inch or 24-inch boulder and the trail's narrow. You don't have a choice of tire positioning. So I run my tire up over that boulder, and when it comes down, if you didn't have those skid plates or rock slider, the weight of the truck's going to come down on that boulder and do some damage. So that's the whole point of the rock sliders. Steps aren't going to cut it. So you really got to be, if you're thinking like I'm thinking, what you're wanting to do, are you going to need to change those out? It's kind of like Light Bright. They bought that Bronco Raptor. What an awesome vehicle. They had a video recently talking about how you use the four-wheel drive system when you use the lockers. They came out right off the bat and said, we don't use these GOAT modes. Why? You've got a front and a rear locker. You don't need that stuff. Now maybe if it was snowing, that truck's got the four-wheel drive automatic function. So, so yeah, you could put that into a snow mode and make the traction control system a little bit more aggressive. So, well, that's a $100,000 truck. So, what are you going to do? What else do I got here? That's kind of about it at this point. I'll probably, like I say, make another video talking about the recovery gear. I want to get a box mounted in the back of the truck to carry all this gear. I've got the room in the back seat that I'll probably carry my recovery gear in the back area because Matt with Ozark Overland Adventures made a good point. When you get somewhere and say you're climbing up a ledge and you can't, the spare tire like on a Jeep, say for instance, hangs up on the ground and you can't back up and you need to winch up, if your gear is in the back, you can't open that swing out on the Wrangler gate. I guess you could probably the glass could lift up and you can access it, but it's real important that your recovery gear is accessible. But I do plan on getting some type of storage, bed-mounted storage box for carrying shovels, tools, jacks, maybe less used recovery gear. There's always stuff you have to store in the back. So we've got some more videos, but my videos are going to switch back over to building that off-road camper, as well as maybe some driving around in the National Forest, which is close by to me. I've done some exploring out there. Haven't really found anything worthy of videoing. Nothing challenging yet, so I'm still kind of waiting. Now, of course, it's beautiful. It's just maintained private roads. It's pretty and everything, but as far as challenging, inclines, rocks, and stuff, I haven't come up on anything yet. All right, I know this video's been long, and I might not have covered everything as far as what I went through to decide on this truck when I was in the buying, when I was doing my research. So that's the main thing I want to stress on this, is be honest with yourself. Make a decision on how you plan on using the truck and sticking with it. I think that's part of the reason I didn't go with the Bilstein lift kit, was because that was probably overkill for what my goals were with this truck. I was more concerned with on-road comfort and improving the stock ride of the system. Not going too big. I don't want to get into the death wobble. When you get into a 35-inch tire, that's a lot of weight. These tires here, I think, are 50. No, I think they're. Are they 58 pounds? I'm not sure. I'll have to go through that, but they're 20 pounds almost heavier than the stock tire. So imagine a 35-inch tire, which I did consider. Baja Boss and Mickey Thompson tire, great tire. I really wanted that tire. They just didn't make the size I needed. They have a 255/85/17 variant available. That's a 35-inch tire. Wow, what a tire. That would have been great tire for off-roading, all around, awesome tire. But it's a lot more weight and a lot more stress on the components. Even with what I'm doing, you got to figure bigger, the ball joints are going to wear out faster. You know, the bushings in the upper controls. Well, that's something else I wanted to talk about. When I installed the lift kit, I went in and got a front end alignment. This is before I took that trip to Texas when I did a mileage test with the stock tires. Had the alignment done, and then came back, installed the bigger tires, and I kind of noticed, and it was more of an illusion, it looked like the tires were kind of going in. So I said, you know what, I just spent $1,000 on these tires, which obviously you can spend a lot more money than $1,000 on tires, but it's $1,000 after I've spent as much money as I've spent on this truck. You know, I've put a lot of cash out building this truck. You know, so the last thing I wanted was for these tires to prematurely wear because I was too cheap to go get the front end alignment checked again. So I went in and got it checked, and in talking to the service technician, he did have to make some toe adjustments. I think the suspension system settled in and it did change the alignment a little bit, so he did make some adjustments. But I did notice that the camber and the caster numbers didn't change any. And I asked him about that, and to be honest with you, he said that those camber adjustments, which are those offset washer nuts on the lower control arm bolts, they were set to the maximum amount. There was no more adjustment available for the front end based off that 2 1/4, 2.5 inch lift I did on this truck. So keep that in mind. If you're getting a Ranger and you're going to do a lift kit, if you're planning on going anything over that 2 1/4 inches, you're going to have some alignment issues. But there's a fix. You can replace that upper control arm, I think with an SPC is what I looked at. I liked those. The ball joint was adjustable, you know, so that you could bring back those alignment specifications back to factory specs. You know, so keep that in mind because there's a lot of 3-inch lift kits that they talk about that you can add that you don't have to swap out that upper control arm, that you can make front end alignment adjustments. But like I said, I only went to 2 1/4, 2.5, and I'm maxed out. Now, there are really good settings. The truck drives great. You know, so keep that in mind when you're doing a lift kit, that if you know you're going to go more than that 2 inches, 2.5 inches, you might as well go ahead and plan on getting those aftermarket upper control arms. And you'll pick up a little bit more articulation. You know, so this kind of comes back to the trimmer as well. When you get the trimmer, the FX4 package just comes with some Ford tune shocks, nothing special. When you move up into the trimmer, you're getting a Fox 2.0 system. Now Ford, I could have taken this Ranger into Ford and had them install at the factory that Fox 2.0 lift kit. And it'd come with the warranty and everything, but it would be limited to a 31-inch tire, and they only add like an inch of lift. Well, those Fox 2.0 shocks, a lot of those have the threaded bodies on them, so you can adjust that lift kit anywhere from stock up to 3.5 inches. You know, so technically, if those Ford Fox shocks are those shocks, and I haven't looked under a trimmer to see what they have for adjustability on the amount of lift. So technically, you could buy the trimmer and probably increase the lift without changing out those coilovers to make room for some bigger tires. You know, so there are options. But just keep in mind that everything you do has an effect on other components. You know, so try to plan your build accordingly. All right, guys, I know this is a long video. I doubt very many of you people have gone through the whole video unless you're like me. You're doing research. You're trying to find all the information you can. Well, this is some first-hand information on what I did. This is what I wanted, you know. So that's the beautiful thing about the Ranger is I line ordered this rear e-locker for 420 bucks. You know, so I got the cheapest truck and got an e-locker, so I didn't have to mess with going aftermarket on that. You know, so that's the problem with all the other makers. Nobody else does that. You know, so on the Tacoma, you've got to get the TRD off-road to get that rear e-locker. You know, on the trail, you got to get the Trail Boss to move up into that E-Lock or the ZR2. So to move up into a rear E-Lock, same with the Nissan. Got to get that Pro 4X if you want that rear E-Locker. More money. You're getting all these other features you might not want. So I did my research. If I've decided, you know what, I'm going to wait for that new Colorado, I would have been happy. I've been thrilled to death. It's a beautiful truck, but it was nice. I wouldn't want to work out of it. I'd have to clean my shoes, take my shoes off or whatever. My dog, he's got fur on the truck. I don't care. He's got his feet up on the window, with his head sticking out the window. I don't care. That's why I bought this truck. So be honest with yourself. What do you need? What do you want? How are you planning on using the truck? That's the biggest decision you need to make. Once you make that decision, you can narrow down your options and what you're going to do. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got some information that might help you in your buying decisions on a mid-sized truck. If you are in that case, I'm not sure on the next generation of this truck if you're going to get this basic truck availability. They might eliminate this truck just like Nissan and Chevy has done. It might just be a crew cab short bed. That's your only option.